Hi, this is Mike McCrease, and once again we're back in Advanced Photoshop. Today we're going to take a look at some techniques that will help you to retouch your photographs and remove unwanted objects or flaws in the picture. And that is the content aware tools, which I think you're going to enjoy quite a bit. You can do some really amazing things with them. Historically, you've always had the clone stamp tool, which has been around for a long time. We've had the spot healing brush tool. It's been the Creative Suite series for quite some time. But there's been some new features that come along that make photo retouching a lot easier, and we're going to explore several of those, and we'll be working on a few different images. To access our images, we're going to use the mini bridge. And if you don't have that visible on your dock here on the side, you can go to the windows. And the mini bridge just allows you to gain access to the files on your through Bridge. Now, Bridge is a program that ships with Photoshop. It allows you to organize and access your images, especially if you've got hundreds or thousands of pictures. It makes it a lot easier to navigate the file directory and find what you're looking for. And as long as Bridge is running, you have access to Mini Bridge, which just allows you real quick access to your files. Frankly, I don't use it that much. I don't find it all that useful, but hey, that's just me. So you can use it if you like. But anyway, I'm using Mini Bridge, and I'm going to go to one of the pictures that I've downloaded from Blackboard called Santori. I'm going to open that up. And this is a travel picture from Greece. Nice picture, but like most of the photographs we take, it has some flaws. One of the things that you'll see is that there's a power line coming in the upper corner over here, which is rather obnoxious. And you got another couple of lines coming down this way. There's this dot. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a building on the coastline, but anyway, it's distracting. You've also got an electrical cord coming over to this light here. All these things are kind of distracting and draw our attention away from what we want our audience to see. So we're going to use the content aware tools to take care of those. I'll go ahead and open up my layers panel, and I'm going to create just a new layer, and I'm going to do all my retouching on this layer. I'm going to hide that for right now. Just close the panel up. And then I'm going to go to my spot healing brush tool. I can just press J on the keyboard to access it. And there are several tools hidden underneath the spot healing brush tool, and you can click and hold down to go to those different tools, or you can press Shift J on your keyboard to cycle through those different tools. And the one we're going after is the spot healing brush tool. Instead of using it in the traditional method, I'm going to come up here to my options bar, and I'm going to select the content aware option. And I'm going to put a check mark where it says sample all layers. And what that's going to do is going to allow me to make the changes and place those changes on my newly created layer, leaving my original layer intact. This keeps in line with our practice of non-destructive editing, which is where we always preserve an original copy of the image, so that if something goes wrong or we need to redo it for whatever reason, we can go back to that untouched version of the photograph. This is very, very important that you do this, especially in a working environment. Okay, again, I'm just going to hide that for the time being, and I'm going to zoom in. Just press Control or Command and the plus key, zoom in, and come up here to that corner. And if I hold down my space bar, you see that it turns into the hand tool, and that allows me to pan through the image. So I can pan over here and get close to this corner where that power line is kind of obnoxious. Now I'm going to go up here to my brushes, and you see that you have got a brush here, and yours might be circular, it might be oval, and you can see I can set the size and the hardness. Of course, I use the keyboard shortcuts for that, and then we'll just leave the spacing set as it is. But you can take this little handle on the circle and you can rotate it around. And this comes beneficial, like if I pull in these side handles, it makes it an ellipse, and then I can rotate it, it'll make a difference. And this way we can kind of get into tighter corners to do that. And I'm just going to set that just an oval about 50 or 60 degrees, and the roundness about the same thing. 50 or 60% is just fine. And press return or enter. I'm going to drop my brush size down. I don't want to have a real big one. But I'm just going to come up here, and I'm going to click and drag over that power line, that offending power line, and just paint over it with the spot healing brush tool. And just like that, it erases it. Now what it's doing is it's taking the pixels from the surrounding area and filling in those dark pixels with the surrounding pixels. And that is because we've got the content aware feature. Now that's what content aware does. It borrows pixels from the surrounding area and fills in the area where you paint over it. Let's go to the other side. Again, I'm holding on the space bar, and we're going to move over here to the other side, and we're going to take care of the power line on this side. Now we've got a little different situation here. I'm going to click and drag over that portion of the power line, and look what's happening. It's kind of blending. It's like pulling in those white pixels into the parts of the mountain, which I don't want. So here's how I'm going to do that situation. I'm going to place my cursor. Let me just zoom in just a little bit closer so you might be able to see in greater detail what's happening here. I'm going to place my cursor to where it straddles the line that separates the mountain from the sky. I'm going to perfectly straddle it, and then I'm going to click and drag across that power line. And that way you don't have that problem with the colors blending in. But you have to straddle that line perfectly, otherwise you're going to, yep, see, you've got a similar problem there. Let's just undo that, and we're going to try that again. Might want to use a slightly smaller brush. There we go. And I'm just going to click and drag over that, or just click and release over that part just to kind of clean it up. And we're going to come on down here and remove the rest of these power lines. There's two of them here we need to get rid of. Now once again, when we get down to where the mountainside or the shoreline meets the water, I'm going to straddle that line. I'm going to click and drag across it. And that way you're going to have a much cleaner repair job. Now it's not a perfect situation. You see here that I may have to redo that from time to time. But I can come back afterwards and do a more polished job with the clone stamp tool just to get it absolutely perfect. So let's just go ahead and clean this up, and I'll come back here in just a second and finish up those other areas where I've got the problem. And you may have to go over that a couple of times. Now in this area up here, which I was unable to do a good job with the healing brush tool, I'll just go to my clone stamp tool, and I just press S to get to that. And here I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and borrow these pixels right over here. I'm just going to alternate click right there, come over here and click and release to paste them in that area. So it kind of cleans things up for us pretty nicely. So I'm going to do that a few of the other areas there too. And then we're going to come down here, sample from this area, and we're just going to tidy up. I'm going to make my brush a little bit harder edge. And again, I'm doing that by holding down the Shift key and pressing the right bracket key to harden the brush. Shift left bracket softens it. Now we can kind of get right up there and take care of that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It looks like there's a little bit of a motorboat wake or something over here, these white spots. Let's get rid of those things too. And then up here at the top, I'm going to go back to my healing brush tool. There's this white building which is kind of obnoxious. Let's just get rid of that. Nobody will ever know it was there. Now we've also got this electrical wire that comes across the top of this arch and goes to this light. Again, I think that's distracting. It kind of destroys the image as far as I'm concerned, so I'm going to get rid of that too. Again, using my spot healing brush tool, we're just going to correct it this way. And that does a real good job of just cleaning that up very quickly, very easily. A little bit of an edge there I'm going to clean up. Again, I'm going to straddle this line. I'm going to click and just drag across and see if we can do a decent job. Oops, I made a mistake there, so I'll undo that. There, nice and clean. And then we'll finish it up over here too. Again, I straddle that line that separates the top and the bottom of that arch. We're going to click and drag over that, and it does a pretty nice job of cleaning it up. It's not perfect, like I say. None of these tools are, but does a pretty good job, and it's better than just using the old standby, the clone stamp tool, though it does have its uses, as I'm showing you right here. Oops, that was a mistake. Let's alternate click right here, get pixels that are more similar. And I've also got my opacity set at 100%. Maybe I've set that at 50. They will blend in a little more nicely with the clone stamp tool. There we go. Oops, that's looking pretty good here. There's a little dot there I want to get rid of. So using the healing brush tool, we'll just get rid of that. Anything else that's distracting, we'll get rid of. Even if it was in the original picture, if it's a distraction, it's going to draw your viewer's attention away from that, and you don't want that. Okay, there's our first picture. It's finished. Let's save that, move on to our next one, and we'll talk about a couple of different techniques. Okay, let's open up prom dresses JPEG. Again, I'll use Mini Bridge to do that, but you don't have to. There's our prom dresses. Just double click that and it opens it up. And we've used this picture in an exercise before. And this time we're going to take the figure of the girl on the left-hand side, and we're going to do two different techniques. And the first one, we're going to remove her completely from the picture. And in the second one, we're going to select her and move her off to the side a little bit. And in each of these cases, what Photoshop does, it senses the background. Okay, in other words, it's aware of the content of the image, and it can separate that content from the background. And when I choose to remove this figure, it's going to fill in the space where she previously existed with these background elements. So let's show you how we will do that. I'll go to my layers panel, and I'm going to do two different techniques. So I'm going to start out by copying my background layer. I'll press Control J, and I'm going to rename layer 1 Fill, because we're going to remove her and fill her with background pixels. I'll use the quick selection tool and select the girl on the left. So just press W on your keyboard. That selects your quick selection tool. And let's just do a quick selection. You don't have to be real precise. We do want to make certain that she is completely selected, but we can miss a few details. Okay, so she's selected there. Zoom out just a little bit. and I need to expand the selection. So let's go to our select menu at the top and choose Modify and Expand. I'm going to expand the selection 10 pixels and click OK. Now, of course, the number of pixels you expand by depends on the size and the resolution of your image. But this is a low resolution image, and 10 pixels is going to work fine for us. I click OK, and you see that we now have a 10 pixel border surrounding the girl. We need those 10 pixels. It's going to help us out a bit. I'm going to make one more modification to my selection. I'm going to go to Select, Modify, and this time I'm going to choose Feather. And I'm going to feather that 5 pixels. And what that's going to do is going to put a blur on the selection. And it'll be a 5 pixel blur that straddles my selection line. And that way, when I fill it with the background pixels, it's going to blend in with the background a little more easily. Okay, so that done, let's press Shift and Backspace. And that opens up your fill panel. And historically what we have done, we've chosen to fill it with a color, foreground, background, or black or gray or white or whatever. This time we're going to choose Content Aware and choose OK. And Photoshop does a little calculation and the image disappears. And there you go. Does an amazing job. It doesn't work perfectly all the time. Your results may vary. In other words, if you do this on yours, you might find that it's picking up maybe part of this girl's dress. And I think the reason it's doing that is her dress might be green, and Photoshop might be confusing it with the green background. But if that's the case, we just use the clone stamp tool or the healing brush tool to clean that up. But it just does an amazing job. Now this works really, really well with a textured background like this. Some other backgrounds, maybe not so much. But with a textured background, it just does a wonderful job. Let's go ahead and hide this layer, the fill layer, for right now. And I'm going to go back to my background layer, and I'm going to copy that again. Command J. And we're going to rename this one Move. Because what we're going to do is we're going to select the girl. Instead of deleting her, we're going to move her off to the side. This is a new feature that was introduced with CS6. So once again, let's go to our quick selection tool. Click over the girl to make a quick selection of her. Let's be certain that we get her arm, her belts, and her hair. Make sure that she is completely selected. Once again, we're going to choose our select menu and choose Modify and Expand. Choose 10 pixels. And we'll choose Select, Modify, Feather, and I'll feather it 5 pixels. Now, I'm going to go to my Content Aware Move tool, which is hidden underneath your Spot Healing Brush tool. And this, again, this is a new tool that was introduced with CS6. So I select that tool, and you get this little swap icon there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag the selection. The girl moves, and then after I start dragging, then I'll press the Shift key so that she moves in a perfectly horizontal direction. And I'll just move her off to the left a little ways. I'll just make her elbow go off the page there. And then I release, and voila. Photoshop has selected the girl, moved her to the side, and then filled the area where she once existed with our background pixels. And of course, at this point, we can deselect. So pretty amazing stuff that you can do with Content Aware Fill, the Healing Brush tool, and Content Aware Move tool. One thing that I neglected to mention is when you use the Content Aware Move tool, you want to make certain that your mode up here is set to move. and not extend. I'm not going to do an example of extend, but what extend does is it allows you to select an object and expand it so that it fills up a wider area. It's not that big of a deal. I just don't think that it's really worth our time to explore, but it's something you might want to take a look at on your own sometimes. Just make certain that the move option is active when you go to use the content-aware move tool. And if you have any stray pixels that are left over, if it left a footprint where she was, you might want to clean that up. Actually, I kind of see a footprint here. You can see how these pixels right over here are duplicated over here. So just so that it's not obvious to the viewer, we don't want our edits to be obvious. I'll just go to my spot healing brush tool, increase my brush size a bit, and I'll just kind of change those around a little bit, just so that we don't have an exact duplicate of those areas. That way no one's ever going to know that she was not in that original position. Okay? So let's save this one and close it. Let's open up our third and final image, which is horse in field. Here we've got a horse in a field of flowers. It's not a, I mean, it's a good idea, but it just wasn't that great a picture. And one of the reasons that it's not a very good photograph is the photographer placed the horse smack dab in the middle of the image, and we don't like that. It's just a rather boring composition. And what we would like to do is take the horse and move it over to the left third portion of the picture, using the rule of thirds principle as our compositional guide. And then you've also seen that there's a tree over here, and back behind the tree there's a cow. We want to get rid of those guys. They have nothing to do with their image. So what I'm going to have you do on your own is take the horse and move it over here off to the left, about 1/3 of the way from the edge. Make certain that you include the shadows too. Don't leave those behind or omit them. And you'll use the content-aware move tool to do that. Then you'll use content-aware fill to remove the tree, the cow, and also make certain that you remove the shadow of the tree and the cow. Okay? So do that. Send all three of those files to me on Blackboard. This is fun and easy, and shouldn't present a major challenge to you. And we'll try something else soon. This is Mike McCrease.